This is Mohammad Mossadegh. He is the last democratically backed Prime Minister of Iran. In 1953, he was unseated from power as a result of a coup d'etat that was orchestrated and executed by the CIA and MI6, the consequences of which would be grave for Iran, as they would be thrown into the iron claw of a Western-backed dictatorship, sowing the seeds of the 1979 Iranian Revolution. In this series of videos on Iran, this video is of most essential viewing, so please watch it in full. Thank you. To understand the significance of Mohammad Mossadegh, we first need to talk about oil. In 1901, the Shah of Persia granted William Knox D'Arcy a concession for 60 years that gave him the rights to the exploration, extraction, refining and sale of oil. In return, Iran received £20,000 cash, £20,000 of shares, and 16% of annual profits. In 1908, oil was struck at Masjid Suleiman, and the following year, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company was born. In 1914, the British government purchased a 51% stake in the APOC to fuel the Royal Navy, and Iranian oil had become an arm of British state power. During World War II, profits of the now AIOC soared from 6.5 million to 85 million pounds. But Britain was profiting twice. First, by taxing those profits through the British Treasury, and second, by receiving dividend payments as the major shareholder of the AIOC. Essentially, Britain was both landlord and taxman. Iranians were growing more and more angry. The majority of oil wealth was flowing abroad, while Iran received only a small share of the profits. In 1949, a man by the name of Mohammad Mossadegh helped form the National Front, a coalition of national parties with one of its central aims to end British control over Iranian oil. In April of 1951, Mossadegh was elected Prime Minister and swiftly nationalises the AIOC, cancelling existing concession agreements and transferring its assets to the newly created National Iranian Oil Company. Britain froze Iran's assets and took the dispute to the International Court of Justice. Mossadegh went personally to The Hague to defend Iran, and the optics were quite stunning. An aging Prime Minister of a small nation standing up to the British Empire. And when the ICJ ruled that it lacked the jurisdiction over Britain's complaint, it was taken as a victory for Iran. And Mossadegh became a hero, not just in Iran, but throughout the decolonising world. But the embargo on Iran's oil had devastated the economy. In 1952, production of oil had dropped by 95%. Mossadegh had won control over his country's oil, but it was virtually impossible to sell. Mossadegh was in the position of running a modern state with its main income cut off. To resist foreign pressure, Mossadegh pushes for greater executive power, and he requests the Shah to give him control over the war ministry. But the Shah declines. In response to the Shah's refusal, Mohammad Mossadegh resigns and is replaced by Ahmad Qavam as Prime Minister. But it proves to be a spectacular miscalculation. Mass protests erupt throughout Iran. Clerics, nationalists and communists all unite behind a single call: bring back Mossadegh. After days of unrest and bloodshed, the Shah caves in, and he reappoints Mossadegh as Prime Minister, giving him full control over the war ministry. But the Shah is becoming increasingly sidelined, and Britain cuts off all diplomatic relations with Iran. But ever since Mossadegh nationalised Iran's oil, Britain had been working on a backup plan, a blueprint to execute a coup d'etat. MI6 officers had been mapping the political terrain, identifying key figures whom they could lean upon and leverage in the event that diplomatic efforts failed, such as senior military leaders that opposed Mossadegh, royalist politicians within the Majlis, clerics concerned about secularism, newspaper editors, street leaders who could mobilise demonstrations. Also, MI6 wanted to gauge the willingness of the Shah, Mohammad Pahlavi, to act against his Prime Minister. By the end of 1951, a provisional plan to execute a coup had been drawn up. It was known as Operation Boot, the aim of which was to use the Shah to dismiss Mossadegh and install a cooperative Prime Minister relying on local military leaders to enforce change. But Mossadegh found out that Britain was conspiring against his government, and he expelled all British diplomats, embassy staff and intelligence personnel from Iran. MI6 had lost its intelligence base in Tehran. They needed another strategy. The Americans. In early 1953, a senior officer in Britain's MI6, Christopher Montague Woodhouse, travelled to Washington to convince the Eisenhower administration to support the plan to remove Mossadegh. But in his meeting with the Eisenhower administration, Woodhouse did not emphasise Britain's concern, which was Iran nationalising its oil. Instead, he appealed to America's greatest fear: communism. It was the Cold War. The Soviet Union bordered Iran, and the Tudeh Party of Iran was the best organised communist party in the Middle East and had even infiltrated the Iranian army. Historically, communist parties rise at a time of economic collapse, and the United States feared that in such an event, Iran may fall to the Tudeh Party, given its bordering of the Soviet Union. If it was to occur, it would be a geopolitical disaster. The Eisenhower administration is convinced, and Operation Boot is upgraded to Operation Ajax, led by Kermit Roosevelt Jr. MI6 supply the intelligence, and the CIA provide operational leadership and $1 million of funding. In June of 1953, covert operations commence. The CIA bribed the press, claiming Mossadegh was anti-Islam. Politicians are bribed to denounce Mossadegh publicly, and street mobs are paid to organise demonstrations. The Shah is relentlessly pressured to cooperate and signs a decree dismissing Mossadegh and appointing General Fazlollah Zahedi Prime Minister. On the night of August 15th, 1953, the coup begins. A close aide of the Shah, Colonel Nahmatullah Nasiri, is sent to Mossadegh to deliver the dismissal order. But Mossadegh has been tipped off, and he arrests Nasiri. The scared Shah flees the country, and Washington believes that the coup has failed and orders Kermit Roosevelt to withdraw. But he disregards the order. Instead, over the next 3 days, he intensifies the campaign against Mossadegh. Demonstrators are paid to create chaos, posing as communists and royalists, convincing Iranians that Mossadegh has lost control. On the 19th of August 1953, army officials loyal to General Zahedi seize radio stations, government ministries, and strategic intersections. Tanks surround the residence of Mossadegh. He escapes, but surrenders the next day. Zahedi emerges from hiding and announces himself Prime Minister over Radio Tehran. The coup is done. The Shah returns to Iran on the 22nd of August 1953. On the 8th of November 1953, Mohammad Mossadegh is put on trial as a traitor. On the 21st of December 1953, he is sentenced to 3 years in prison, following which he is placed under house arrest until his death on the 5th of March 1967. Iran had fallen to the rule of the Western-backed Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and over the next 25 years, he would increase his ruthless authoritarian grip over the country, sowing the seeds for the Iranian Revolution in 1979. As for the oil, well, Iran would retain formal ownership, but a Western consortium, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France and the Netherlands, took control of production and sales according to a 1954 agreement, in which profits were split 50-50. The 1953 coup d'etat in Iran would be the first major peacetime CIA operation to successfully overthrow a foreign government. The first of what would be many. Over the next several decades, the US would help topple governments in Guatemala, Brazil, Chile, Grenada, Panama, Afghanistan, and Iraq. What began in Iran became a defining instrument of American foreign policy throughout the Cold War and beyond.